What is up, YouTube? Today we're watching Core Gaming. As you guys know, Core Gaming is one of the goats of content creation for the FGC. Very highly produced, highly very intensive, work intensive videos. And this one's about how to reduce salt. So normally I don't react to Core videos, but since this is related to like fighting game mentality and how to get better, because you know, if you can reduce your salt and you can plow through the salt, no pun intended, you'll become a better player. And I'm really curious to see kind of what Core Gaming's take is on this. They're not a competitive player, but they've probably done their research with competitive players. As you can see the silhouette of Punk in the background. So really curious about their takes.
So, do you like making people feel salty?
Oh, yeah, I love making other people salty. It's one of my favorite things. Like, especially when
it is a good feeling.
Someone's family salty. So, like, someone's family will travel to a tournament with them or something, and they're right behind them playing. I love
family?
That when I beat them and I see them either
That's
crying
crazy.
or they sad or whatever the case may be. That is the best feeling ever, in my opinion.
While any competitive...
So I'm gonna keep it a buck. I don't know if I've ever like had someone cry after I beat them, but I've had people like slam their sticks before, and that's a good feeling. Like, it's not a good feeling in the moment, but then like a couple like out in self-reflection later that day, you're like, ha, 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 I just made that dude slam his stick. That's funny as hell. But yeah, the family crying, I gotta step up my game, bro. I gotta step up my game.
In the first year Street Fighter 6 was at EVO, it had 7,083 competitors who paid to compete, and 7,077 of them got eliminated after losing
I was one of them.
two
Yep.
best of 3 sets. That's a lot of salty people.
Oh shit, Daigo and Hungry Box? That's a crazy shot.
Like this is possible.
Bro, how does Daigo look like he's asleep? Like, my man looks like he's gonna fall asleep at pools.
People gathered for just one weekend. An event like this is possible in a game where the length of a round is limited by a 99-second timer, and where a round can be over in seconds.
What a round! Oh my god, that's a 10-second round!
It makes one wonder if this is all just some cultish exercise in masochism or even sadism.
That felt good, didn't it?
Like
Yeah,
feeling
potentially.
sour or bitter, feeling salty encompasses a range of negative emotions, and it usually comes when something
James
is
Chad.
not going your way.
I remember
in
that
the
shit.
game. If you're beating yourself up for not doing better, you
Just
might
a
feel
Rising
shame
Thunder.
or inadequacy.
Good games though, you played well.
No, I dropped like that.
You did.
If you think you're
It's so
opponent-
funny because I remember a lot of these. These are like classic salt clips that they're showing off, right? Like, these are like the pinnacle of salt clips from like the FGC archives. This one, of course,
wrong,
too.
somehow you might feel anger or resentment.
This is a classic.
And if you think there's something
Wait,
wrong
they're not, they don't show the full clips though. They just show like the teases. This is insane,
somehow
bro.
you might
Maybe they
feel
show it later in the
anger
video. I don't want
or
to spoil it.
resentment. And if you think
But
there's
I mean,
something
like,
wrong
literally
with the
Stanford
game
just
or
slams the stick there.
you might feel despair and frustration.
I shouldn't come there and lose to the monitor or the PS4.
If someone outplays me, that's good shit.
Oh yeah, I remember Punk when he lost to the one guy because he smelled too bad. Good times.
Lose
Yeah,
to
that would make me
somebody
salty.
with online infrastructure as part of the matchup, that's the thing that gets me mad the most.
If being so emotionally affected by competitive gaming seems odd or even pathological, consider how people behave in traditional sports.
Yeah, people are salty in
competitive
anything.
Game, players will inevitably suffer some form of psychological pain, which sounds bad, but I like to think of it like the inevitability of suffering physical pain in a sport like soccer. Growth through adversity is why we have competition in the first place, and it's also why
Are this just like random stock footage? Like, who is this dude? I'm legitimately curious. Like, did they record this? Like who is this guy? Just some random guy.
the inevitability of suffering
I wonder if that's like
pain
one of
in
the staff or
first place.
something.
Have a coach.
Like one of the
You're
editors.
probably not going to get a therapist just because.
Oh yeah, they're using a lot of stock footage
So
in
is
this,
it
huh?
possible to reduce salt on your own? Blanca.
Bro, does that look like Akuma?
So is it possible to reduce salt on your own?
Yeah, that's why I was curious if it was AI. I don't think it looks like AI. Especially he got a lot of backlash because the last video had some AI and then he removed that. I doubt he would use AI. So he's probably, instead of AI, he probably just bought like a lot of stock footage.
Good by David Burns claims that you can alleviate your anxiety, depression, guilt, and anger with a concept called CBT, not closed beta test, but cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
It may seem like overkill to treat video game salt with a book designed to restore people's will to live, but the same
I've
stuff
actually studied
applies,
CBT a little
albeit
bit.
with lower stakes.
Very
The
interesting.
concept of CBT is simple. When your character gets KO'd and you lose in the most unfair way possible.
Not that kind of
It
CBT.
seems like your saltiness is a direct result of that, but this isn't the case.
No, the
Burns
CBT
argues
we're
that
talking
you
about in this
first
video.
see the thing that happened, but then you process what happened in your brain in what's called your internal dialogue, and that negative interpretation of the event is what makes you feel the salt.
So basically, it's about changing that step 2.
Idea has been around for a long time, going back to the Buddha and the Greek Stoic philosophers. Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. But maybe you feel that the way you look at things is already very accurate, and any deviation would be an exercise in self-deception. Cognitive behavioral therapists argue that you can prove your negative thoughts wrong by identifying them and pointing out their fallacies, which are known as cognitive distortions. David Burns has a list of 10 cognitive distortions and calling them out in your internal
Oh,
dialogue.
this is interesting. I've never seen this list before.
David Burns has a
This is
list of
something
10
that I've read about CBT, but usually there's not I'm more into sports psychology and reading how athletes do it, and they don't actually call out CBT, but there's a lot of principles that overlap, right? I've never seen this list before, but I definitely noticed myself doing some of these things, and the better I've got at mental processing and the better my mentality is getting, the better I am at recognizing certain thoughts that are just okay, that's inaccurate, that's wrong. So one example is sometimes a matchup feels really hopeless, right? And you're man, this matchup just sucks. Or realistically, this kind of falls into this all or nothing, where it's man, I don't think I could actually win this matchup. Or realistically, someone else is doing it, and there's things that you just don't understand, that you just can't. You don't know what you don't know about the matchup, right?
cognitive distortions, and calling them out in your internal dialogue is the key.
Vanilla D-pad, appreciate the raid.
This is in no way a replacement for the book or seeking a
I've never read
but
this.
It'll give you an idea of how this stuff works, and maybe it'll save you from an embarrassing moment or two. All or nothing
I
thinking.
know that's real.
After getting eliminated from a tournament without winning a single match, your automatic thought might be, I'm the worst. This is very unlikely to be true. At the same Street Fighter 6 bracket mentioned earlier,
Yeah, that's true.
the number of people who did not win a single match was 2,600.
You know, one of the places I see this most in my Twitch chat, where Twitch chatters will come in and be like, "Man, I'm so shit at this game. I'm fucking garbage." And meanwhile, they're master, which means they're about 80% of the population.
Players and had everyone play each other in the largest round robin tournament ever, you would find a last place finisher.
Mystic
but would
Reaper.
that player be guaranteed to be worse than this guy? Or how about this guy?
I don't play a whole lot of video games.
Words like worst,
Who is that?
best, absolute, and completely are examples of all or nothing language, and while we casually use these terms all the time,
Worst episode ever.
Albacino, yeah.
most things are not black or white. All or nothing thinking is the root of perfectionism, the idea that any mistake means you're worthless. Not only is this untrue, perfect is an impossible expectation to satisfy, which means you'll constantly be disappointed until you realize that shades of gray exist.
Yep, the best players are not perfect, even in Street Fighter, right? I mean, we literally just saw Punk lost the mirror match. Probably one of the best players is not the best player in the world, right?
Overgeneralization.
No one can be perfect.
This is the false assumption that just because something didn't go your way, it will never go your way. This kind of automatic thought often comes after getting rejected. Whether you get rejected after a job interview, a first date, or just asking to get next game, it makes no sense that the outcome will be the same every time because the people and situations are always changing. We are not living in Groundhog Day where every day is the same, and
This one I see a lot when people enter a tournament and they go 1-2, 2-2, and they're like, "Man, I can never get out of pools," even though they might be getting better. And they might just have a bad run because there's a lot that you can't control in fighting games, right? You can't control your bracket path. You can't control the matchups you play. You can't control if you have a really hard path and someone has the easy path. And people make generalizations about their player's skill when
Something is
they shouldn't.
which was the whole point of the movie.
Anything different is good.
The pain of rejection leads people to overgeneralize, and you even see this in-game. In Tekken, one of Kazuya's best moves is his Hell Sweep because it's too fast to block on reaction, but if it's blocked by a prediction or luck,
Yep.
he can be severely punished.
He'll live and die by the health sweep. While standing two, he'll do all that.
A Kazuya player who overgeneralizes might get their health sweep rejected once. Think, what's
Oh
the
my
point?
god, I see
My
this
health sweep
all
will
the
never
time
work.
in people.
Stop using one of
Yeah.
his best tools for the rest of the match.
Yep.
You tried your best, and you failed miserably.
I've coached people that are like, hey, why don't you use Ken Jinrai? And they're like, oh, because it never works. And then you watch Capcom Cup, everyone uses Ken Jinrai.
Mental filter. This is when you focus on one bad thing about a situation while ignoring all the positives and then claiming the whole situation is bad. Justin Wong is one of the greatest fighting game players of all time, but he's also known for one of the greatest losses of all time, Moment 37.
That is true.
While one could imagine how devastating this loss would have been, Justin didn't dwell on it much at all.
So I don't think I got salty when like that moment happened. To us, it was like, that was good shit, right? That was wow. Like I'd never seen that before. The Daigo was Tuesday. I lost that set, but I was
It's kind of hard to get salty if someone just like outplays you.
Ultimate End, Marvel Top 8 was after that Daigo parry. I won Marvel 33.
That was his fourth Evo title in
Yeah,
Marvel.
that's like something like you. Like, how would you ever get? I can't even rationalize getting salty at like if someone busts out tech or like something that's like impossible to do and you get salty. Like, it's kind of just. I don't know. Usually the shit you get salty is like losing to like someone bad or like losing to someone that like you just get really unlucky or like they're talking about like factors out of your control, like someone smelling bad or like, you know, your controller malfunctions or that sort of thing.
Versus Capcom 2.
Or lag,
He lost
yeah.
in Third Strike.
This is just them being like insanely good.
His Marvel trophy suddenly disappear. When you filter out all the things you've accomplished and only think about that one
Missing
mistake,
tech, yeah.
you're making
That's-
a low-light reel in your head and putting it on repeat. Imagine making a reel of Tiger Woods missing putts and calling him a bad golfer.
Mm-hmm.
It's absurd, but your automatic thoughts love to do that. Anything can seem bad if
Bro,
you
as
censor
someone
all
that's
the
golfed recently, making that putt is so much harder than you think. I just went golfing for the first time like a month ago. They make it look so much easier than it actually is.
Disqualifying the positive. This one goes one step further than mental filter. Instead of ignoring the positive things about something, you take it and somehow say it doesn't count. When someone compliments you on your gameplay,
Yeah.
you might have an automatic thought like, they're just being nice. When you win a match, you might think, I was lucky, or...
This is like 100% facts.
Of course, you might want to be humble like Ryu,
I still don't have what it takes. I must train harder.
but at some point you have to celebrate your victories, big or small,
True.
if you want to enjoy this activity. Even Daigo, who has written about his aversion
Banger
to
book, by the way.
complacency,
Banger book.
mentions in his book that he celebrates his victories. It's just that he keeps them short.
Mm-hmm.
If every time you win you think it was a fluke or I just got lucky, then you might just be disqualifying the positive. Jumping to conclusions. This is when you automatically come to a negative conclusion about something without proper evidence, basically acting like a terrible detective. There are two ways this comes about. One is called mind reading, hastily assuming...
Yeah, it's weird, like, right? Like, because like sometimes, like, let's say you beat someone and they're bad, you're just like, oh, they're just a scrub, I'm not good. But then I've also noticed, like I noticed a lot of these thoughts happen to me too. But like, let's say I beat someone really good, and I'll be like, oh, that was just a fluke. Where it's like realistically, you just have to like take it very objectively. And maybe I have like a 40% chance of being that person. Like maybe they are favored in the run back, but hey, I still have that 40%. And like I just have to like the closer you are to reality, I think the better you are at processing this sort of thing. So that's kind of how I see it. Is like I try not to dwell on this sort of stuff too much.
This is when your friend isn't responding to your text message and you immediately think they're disrespecting you when there could be a million reasons why they're not answering.
Mm-hmm.
Mind reading is particularly insidious when playing online ranked. Because there's little to no communication outside of the gameplay, it's easy to assume that your opponent has no respect for you, even when they're playing their
Yeah,
game.
it's like, well, the thing is, a lot of it's just like people overthink it, right? Like it doesn't matter if I didn't play good or they just happen to play bad, right? Like realistically, you won. like it doesn't matter what all the variables are, and the more you think about it, and the more you like kind of get into that negative thought pattern, like it doesn't do you any service, right? That's like even what Daigo talks about. He's like, if I'm gonna celebrate, I'm gonna celebrate it for short, because like if you celebrate it too much, you might like kind of be overconfident and then like artificially inflate your ego. But if you don't celebrate it enough, then like then what's the point of winning? Yeah, it's a really hard balance.
The only way you can know for sure what your online opponent is truly thinking is by having special powers.
Let's talk about power. Real power.
The second way to jump to conclusions is called the fortune teller error. This is when you become pessimist Nostradamus and predict unrealistically bad outcomes as fact. It's one thing to go to a tournament and predict, I probably won't get first place.
If you go into a match thinking you're not going to win, then you're probably not going to win, right?
But it's another to think, when I lose, they're all going to laugh at me. What's more realistic is that when you lose, you'll be like over 99.9% of the entrants who will get eliminated in bracket. Fortune telling can be particularly distracting during a match. Something you often hear from the best players is not to think about the outcome of the match during the match.
게임을 하고 있는 도중에 다른 생각이 가끔 들 때가 있는데 그러면 보통 게임은 져요. 이거 져서
That's a very good way to put it.
다음 상대가 누구누구인데.
Realistically, like a lot of like mental training is just realizing like how can I just focus on the match and reduce like thinking about other stuff.
이런 생각을 할 때도 있어가지고 대회가 잘 될 때는 그런 생각 없이 그냥 게임에만 집중해가지고 되는 경우가 많고.
So basically, he's saying the less I think about the match, the better.
Every moment you think the thought, I must not lose, is a moment taken away from thinking about your opponent's next move. If you have an automatic thought that tries to read people's minds or predict the future, call it out. You don't have magical powers. Magnification and minimization.
I mean, you could say that you could literally apply that to like every part of like mental. Like it's not even just about magical powers and like thinking about what they put. It could be like, man, like I don't want to lose this. I don't want to. Like, how is this guy so good? Like any of those thoughts, like don't do you any service.
So when you take something bad and blow it out of proportion, and minimization is taking something good and downplaying its significance. A great example of magnification is when someone taunts you during a match.
He did a taunt combo to Punk in Grand Finals of Evil?
That's optimal.
What's interesting about taunting in fighting games is that it loses its power to provoke if it has a clear benefit in the gameplay. Third strike players expect others to use the taunt command because they know it gives characters various buffs. This is not disrespect.
Yeah, everyone uses taunts in third strike.
Charge is a move that buffs your next attack while removing your ability to block, so it's mostly useless. But it's now widely seen as a taunt, even though it was designed as a move. What this all means is that for a taunt to be effective as a tool of psychological warfare, it must be useless in the game. For a useless thing to become a big deal, you need magnification, also known as catastrophizing.
Oh my god! Knuckle dude!
On the other end, you can minimize the significance of a good thing. A common way of doing this is making your accomplishment seem smaller by comparing it to another accomplishment. Winning your first match in a tournament is a big deal until you tell yourself that it's not as good as making it out of pools. But you can be like this even if you win EVO 9 times. You can say it wasn't 10 times, and so on. If you can only hold L's and not take W's, of course you'll feel like you only lose. Emotional reasoning. This is when you think the way you feel is evidence for the truth of the situation. This isn't to say your feelings should never be trusted. Intuition's really
this whole video's been bars so far.
But your feelings would not pass as proof in a serious.
This is why, like, this is a very. It's so funny. Like, I should be noticing these things in myself as opposed to like stream chat and people I coach. And I do. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think self-reflection is very, very important. But one of the most common things I see are like people come in chat and are like, I don't know how to get better. I keep losing. And it's like, realistically, you are doing the right thing. It's just losing doesn't feel good.
How reasonable do you think these automatic thoughts sound? I'm mad at my opponent, therefore they wronged me somehow. This game seems impossible to learn, so it is impossible to learn. I feel like I'm playing poorly, therefore I am playing poorly. Case closed.
Well, look at that.
When spoken out loud,
This is actually a big one that I've put a lot of work into. I used to fall under this trap a lot where like I feel like I'm playing bad and therefore I am playing bad. Where it's realistically like sometimes you could just be catching some unlucky breaks and therefore you think you're playing bad and it downward spirals. And it's like noticing the difference between like, hey, I might not be on my game, and hey, I'm just getting kind of unlucky and I'm actually playing pretty well.
Case
and it's a hard line to like.
When spoken out loud, these statements
it's not black and white.
In competitive gaming, you often need to be your own coach and spit out some facts to counter your emotional reasoning. Are you actually playing worse than usual, or did your opponent find a counter to your strategy? Should or must statements. The psychotherapist Albert Ellis described 3 thoughts that hold us back. One is the idea that I must do well or I'm worthless. The second one is that others must treat me well or they're worthless. And finally, the third one is that the world must give me exactly what I want now or the world is worthless.
Because of the must. If you didn't muster
Sure.
me, then you wouldn't awfulize,
LTG needs this.
catastrophize, say I can't stand it, and put yourself down.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go there.
Saying I should or must do something is that it creates pressure, guilt, and anxiety.
I must train harder.
This makes training feel like a burden because it's now an obligation you can feel.
I fall for this one a lot.
But if instead you were to say,
100%.
I will train harder, it changes the focus from pressure to passion. There are many alternatives to saying should or must that convey your values.
Sometimes I feel like I have to do it. And anytime I feel like I have to do something, it never works out. This is something I noticed, I have to play after work. And even though I'm tired as shit, and then I play after work, and I'm tired as shit, and I feel like I actually actively get worse. And so a lot of it comes down to obviously, if you're gonna practice, you're gonna do it in the best scenarios. But 2, it's like I don't have to play ranked after work. I can do something I enjoy a bit more, which is watch a show and practice my execution on the side or something like that.
You're only stuck with, I'd like very much to do well, but I never have to.
You could definitely do a lot of psychic damage to yourself without noticing.
Now, when you say someone else
100%.
should or must treat you a certain way, you're putting your expectations of people unreasonably high, and when they fail to meet those expectations, which is inevitable, you will feel resentment, hostility, or anger.
One thing I've been going through a lot is I notice myself wanting to play, but the me that wants to play is me at full power, right? It's not me at half power because I got off of work and I'm tired and I'm not focused, right? And so to me, a lot about getting better is when you're in those moments, it's about building yourself up stronger so that when you do get to play, or for me, it's when I stream or I'm in a tournament or something, that I can actually play better because I've done the work in the background that may not be as enjoyable.
When playing online, someone might taunt you and you might think...
That's been something I've been working on recently in the past
year. If
year.
the Roman Emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius were alive today, he would not be surprised in the slightest. In Meditations, he writes, "Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with the meddling, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial." A Stoic reminder that instead of spending energy on things you cannot control, use it on other things like getting good.
Yep.
The last way to use should or must statements is that the world should be a certain way this instant. When it's not, you feel...
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. I'm chasing the high of playing in a flow state. Yeah, it's very hard to chase. You have to set up the right conditions for it, and even then it's not guaranteed, right?
Hopeless and frustrated. Perhaps you want a fighting game to be more balanced. You can't change it right now, but you can adapt. Labeling. What if in Street Fighter, instead of saying you lose each time you've lost, it said you are a loser?
You are a loser, that'd be funny.
Go unnoticed because we know there's a huge leap between losing a game and becoming a loser. That's because the word loser is a label, and the problem with labels is
that'd be insane, bro.
Human being into a simple stereotype. If losing in a game made you a loser, then the best players of that game are all losers because they've lost more games than anyone. Using negative labels on yourself only serves to make you feel worthless. Conversely, you can use negative labels on others to protect your ego, but it generates hostility and prevents self-reflection. If you call your opponent a coward, it's on them to change, but if you call them a defensive player, it's on you. It might feel good to label others.
Yeah, interesting. I do notice other people do this. This is like a trap I fall into, but I definitely notice other people do that.
Too much blame on yourself for a negative outcome. This can lead to guilt and even apologizing for things out of your control.
I was playing against a player and I was about to lose the set. It was like a pretty close set. I played this character named Hawkman. He had the super that he could charge up to full charge and it would become unblockable. It's really bad. You have to be like asleep at the wheel to get.
I just permitted the term in chat,
like, wow,
kill this weight. That's great.
I gotta make something happen. So I go for this really gimmicky setup and I win. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry. It turns out when you lose in a tournament set, the last thing you want to hear is the guy apologizing to you. A stupid kid that I am, I was like, I'm sorry.
I've definitely apologized before too.
Like kept getting worse and worse, and then eventually, one of my friends said it, Willie. He said they shouldn't call you wall jump man. They should call you apology man.
We do this because taking accountability is respectful, and it's why when accepting a loss, we say things like, "This loss."
The my tweet. They just casually have the my tweet there. That is the epitome of everything terrible about Street Fighter. That's crazy.
On me, I didn't train enough, and I will work hard to do better next time. But is anything really
hilarious.
the result of one person? Imagine how strange it would be to win a tournament, go on the mic, and just say, "This win is all because of me, and I deserve all the credit. Not a single person helped me in any way to get to where I am today, so thank me and good night."
Thank me.
These statements make much sense. Whether the one who loses can attribute the loss to anything else without sounding like excuses is another matter. But the truth is, no outcome, good or bad, can be entirely attributed to one person. Now that you've gotten an idea...
Yeah, I feel like people have definitely done that.
You might have noticed a couple of things. A person who purposefully tries to exacerbate your distortions is often called a bully, and someone who tries to fix your distortions are usually called a friend. We tend to be our own worst bully.
You'll die by your own hand.
But rarely do we treat ourselves like a friend when we have a negative automatic thought.
That's a nice jacket you've got there.
When you call yourself a complete failure, you're basically saying a villain character's win quote to yourself.
One of the things that the best advice I've gotten from that's helped me improve my mental is to like pretend you're your own coach, right? And so you kind of like role play and think about like, if I were coaching someone, what would I say to that person to like help them improve, right? And really that's usually the right response, because you don't want to like, if you're coaching someone, you don't want to be like, damn, you fucking suck, like just give up, right? Because you want that person to be better. You also don't want them like, you don't want to jerk them off and be like, yeah, you're so good, you'll like, don't worry about it. like there's definitely like a fine line between like helpful, like being too egotistical and like being too self-deprecating that you have to find. And like that's kind of how I see it, is like if I were coaching someone, then what would I say?
Self.
Angry Scorpion, appreciate a 6.
Friend a complete failure who's in the same situation. You would likely say something like, a single loss doesn't make you a failure, which is true, so you wouldn't just be lying to spare their feelings. Why not treat yourself like your own best friend when you have cognitive distortions? This is what David Burns calls the double standard technique.
But yeah, it's kind of the same idea. Like best friend, okay, coach, kind of the idea.
But even with ways to reduce salt, not everyone wants to be salt-free. If you could press a magic button that made all your salt and
this is true. This is true.
Would you do it?
No, I would never press that button.
I would never press that button, because sometimes, you know, we get motivated by salt, I think.
People who don't get salty aren't winners, in my opinion. I don't think there's a player that I know that don't get salty that wins. Every single player that y'all see win Street Fighter or NBA championship, NFL, Super Bowl, whatever the case may be, every last one of them.
Yeah, the salt's motivation.
Salty clips about them. So I think no one who wins anything in life is happy all the time. You know, it's just impossible. You have to have that little salt, because that's like the competitive edge. If you don't have that, I feel like you can't really go far in competitions.
For me, salty is necessary for me to realize what's wrong. So salty itself, it's...
Your boy Idom never gets salty. You sure about that?
It's up to you.
We all get salty. We all get salty.
So if salt is a fuel that motivates players to get better, then why are we trying to eradicate it? Thinking, I'm a complete failure after losing means you have high standards for yourself. Getting angered by your opponent taunting you likely means you have a sense of dignity and fairness. When you personalize a negative outcome, even if it wasn't your fault, it shows that you are empathetic. So instead of a magic button, Burns suggests you think of it as a magic dial. For example, I'm a complete failure dialed down is I wish I did better, which serves the same purpose without making you overly sad.
Yeah,
By toning down the excess salt instead of removing it altogether, you can still do you while having enough salt to season your next victory.
Yeah. There's definitely like, I like the dial analogy, because there's definitely like too little salt and too much salt. You kind of have to find like the right middle ground.
Use your salt from today to season your next victory.
So the question remains, why play competitive games that put you through all this?
Salt to season your next victory. That's fire.
some kind of way after that. What a crazy run.
Because playing with others is a chance to learn about yourself in an environment where mistakes are not life or death.
He finally did it. You can say anything you want about this kid. He is an Evo champion, and you can never take that away from him.
In the book, The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt argues that children need to go out and play more with real people instead of being isolated to their smartphones and other screen-based activities.
Bro, what is this clip, bro? Wait, that was crazy. There's just he's just watching the watching the on the phone. Is this like a 3-year-old kid? Like what? What am I looking at?
Their smartphones and other screen-based activities.
We have
that kid gonna grow up to be a professional gooner. That's insane.
He writes, "It is an unsupervised, child-led play where children best learn to tolerate bruises, handle their emotions, read other children's emotions, take turns, resolve conflicts, and play fair." Though he acknowledges the benefits of gaming, he is skeptical that online gaming could be as beneficial as hanging out with friends in the real world. I agree, which is why I think offline gaming is the perfect complement. This is where your ability to accept defeat and handle emotions is tested in front of real people.
Yeah.
I would tell the salty guy, that whatever your behavior is, be it salt or rage, it's gonna affect other players. Most of the people, when I told them that, they tend to control their salt better. They're forced to control because they don't want to look bad, as a human.
This is at Evo Japan? This is Evo Japan, right? This is like recorded almost a year ago. That's crazy. He's been cooking this video for a while.
Something they never ever do. So it's a effect that, it's a chain effect that eventually I realized it works very good and it became very healthy for the whole community.
It's like you're basically processing.
Man, Mike Ross looking kind of fly. I'm not gonna lie.
You're not letting that. You're not acting on emotions right away. So
yeah, he got better with age. You know what I'm saying?
And this is why I feel the offline open bracket fighting game tournament is so valuable, and I never want to see it die off. It's one of the final vestiges of face-to-face human interaction in competitive gaming where anyone can join, get salty, and fist bump afterwards. This was Gerald from Corey Gaming. Thanks for watching.
Oh, that's over already? Shit. That went by quick.
This video is video saw as well as extended interviews.
Honestly, I think salt is only a problem if it becomes physical.
But you can still access the best bits of the podcast for free by randomly or selecting.
Yeah, so if you like this, go sub to the Patreon. Link in chat. Yeah, I think overall, my thoughts, clap. That was a good video. I was actually surprised how good that was. I think it's very well researched. Usually I'm kind of skeptical about like taking advice from how to say like non-competitive players, but because I think he got so much, this is so well researched. Like one, you're bringing in stuff from like outside that's really useful and practice. I think about mentality is fighting games in general are not like, it's not very, fighting game mentality is not very well studied, right? So if you're gonna like make a mentality video, or if you're gonna like get better at mentality, you have to look outside the FGC, which is exactly what Corey Gaming did, right? We're looking at CBT, we're looking at some other books. There's a million books out there. I've read a lot. I haven't read those two, but yeah, I thought this is really well researched, a lot of practical advice, which I think is pretty cool. I get it's a little outside their wheelhouse, so I'm not sure. I'm actually kind of curious to see how well this will do, because this is like more of like a guide and that sort of thing. But this is really good. This is very good. I enjoyed this video a lot. I think people get salty. I think the big thing is actually kind of what Mike Ross was talking about there at the end. Is it's all about how much you let salt affect you, right? Some people, they can channel that salt into being like a better competitor, right? So for example, like one of the last times I was salty was when I lost the first Street Fighter Stage Jam Slam, and I'm like, man, this fucking sucks. And so I'm like, I don't want that to happen again, so I'm gonna grind. And I grinded, and I did well in the next Stage Jam Slam, right? So I think it's the same kind of thing, where it's the same thing. Like if I go to a tournament and I might not do well, but that tournament helps provide me motivation to like improve, right? And that's why like to me competing is so important, because if I don't have like if I don't compete and I lose that competitive drive, then it's hard for me to get better. But if I compete and I lose, like that actively makes me a better player. It's something that I've realized over the years, because I've been playing fighting games for a while. Obviously, my mentality when I started out playing fighting games was complete shit. I recognize it as complete shit. It's something I've worked on. It's still not amazing, but I think it's definitely in the better spot. And I think pretty much everything in this video was bars. It was really good. So yeah, I liked it. Chat, what are the thoughts? Mini Master, appreciate the prime. Yeah, honestly, I wasn't. There's definitely like some things I've been saltier than others. Like that Gobu set, I wasn't really that salty, even though I lost, because I was just like happy to be second, you know. Like I thought most of those players there were better than me, and I'm like, damn, I got second. I got to beat Daru. I got to beat Sonic. I was pretty happy with how I did. But yeah, I think this is good. Cool. Anyways, like, share, subscribe. Take care, y'all, and peace.